Hi, I'm Bill Riley, President of Ironsides Technology. Thanks for joining us on this seminar as we explain how we support and execute our remote installations. As a company located outside of Boston, Massachusetts, we do business across 16 time zones, from Hawaii to Helsinki. And in fact, remote installations has been part of our DNA since day one, for over 15 years now. What we're going to do is have a chat with Tim Rogers. Tim heads up our technical support and installation process, and he'll explain to you exactly how we get this done. As you might imagine, it requires quite a bit of planning and experience and execution, and Tim and his team bring all that to bear to quite successfully promote and support remote installations across North America and Western Europe. After Tim's presentation, we're happy to address any questions or comments you might have, and we'll put that contact information at the end of our recording. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and thank you again for joining us. Bye-bye. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this webinar today to talk about how Ironsides has been conducting remote installations during COVID. Doing things remotely is actually part of our DNA. We've been doing it for quite some time. I'm Bill Riley, president and co-founder. I'm not in outer space, but I like that background, so I'm using it today. I'm joined by Tim Rogers. He's our technical support manager. He's the guy that really lives and breathes and makes sure that all this stuff happens properly. And we're also going to have a separate video with TJ Forsyth, kind of a bit of a casual approach to how we handle all this stuff. But TJ's a nice speaker, and he touches on a few things that we don't. So with that, we're going to go into our presentation, and I'll introduce these topics, and then Tim is going to speak on them for a minute. So what we do with every installation is we try to plan for it, obviously. If we have a good plan, we're going to have a good installation. And this starts with the plan of approach. This is a screenshot from an actual, looks like a 15-page document that we put together. May seem like a lot, but there's some important details that we want to cover. And Tim, can you comment on that, please?
Sure. Thanks, Bill. As Bill is saying, for any given installation, there are a lot of things that go into making sure the solution is the right fit for all the problems that you or any customer would have. So we try to take a structured approach to understanding what's going on, what we need to do, and then before we actually implement the solution, we make sure that we have that documented and available so that the customer and ourselves are all on the same page as far as what we're going to do and how we're going to do it.
Now, I know when we were talking about this, you mentioned that a good bit of this is done actually by the account rep, the sales guy, with the customer. And the plan of approach actually kind of segues into a statement of work. Is that correct?
Correct, right. So in this case, this one was written by TJ Forsyth, our VP of Sales. And oftentimes they will come up with the plan of approach and bring us in if there's a very complicated technical aspect, but first use their own production experience and knowledge of the customer to really get to the meat and potatoes of what they really need. So on the technical side, we understand exactly what we have to do.
Great. So it's a real hands-on document. This next page that I extrapolated from the document speaks to that more deeply. Kind of gives an equipment overview of all the different pieces of equipment on the floor that we interface with, and a brief description of how that happens. Can you talk to that a little bit, Tim?
Sure. So, excuse me, for any given installation, we could be installing on lots of different types of equipment, printers, finishing equipment, insertion devices, manual stations. So through the plan of approach, the customer scoping, obviously we need to understand what it is we're going to be installing on. And then through documentation, we will itemize those devices and kind of discuss with the customer what the tracking points, integration points. In the case of printers, for example, we may tie in through a Prisma or Fiery controller. Excuse me, if it's on the insertion floor, we may use our own cameras or existing cameras, or even take log files in to do tracking that way. So the whole process, we work with the customer to understand what they're doing, and we can take data in through all sorts of different methods.
Great, thanks, Tim. So from that, we move into our control file, JIF, job information file. This is kind of the kickoff point for telling us what we need to do and how we're going to go about doing it. So Tim is really the guy to talk about this as well. So Tim, can you take us through it, please?
Sure. The JIF file, job information file, as you said, really is the central point to the system. Without a good control file, much like any other tracking system, we really don't have much, right? So one of the things we often say with customers is garbage in, garbage out. What's different about our system in general compared to some other systems out there is, while the control file we receive is file-based, overall we are not file-based. So we have this specification. Our control file is XML based overall. There's a lot of different metadata we can support, a lot of different processing types, matching configurations, machine setups. We can take all of that information in, and then we put it into a database, and that works with our server architecture. So all of the workstations can work on jobs simultaneously. All of that metadata can be searched and reported on through the centralized server, all from that single control file. So this really is the central key to having a good system. The better that control file is, the more information that we get, the better the customer experience on the other end.
Great, thanks, Tim. And I think it's important to note, because this is about remote installation, all this work is typically done through Zoom like this, or through other types of group meetings. But it's all good prep work that we do to make sure that the client gets what they expect and it's done correctly. An important part of that is the reports that we provide with the system. It's a very extensive reporting package, and again, typically we expect that the sales rep is going to be working hand in hand with the client to understand what information they need, so we can make sure that we drive that from JIF into a reporting package that we provide with every system. And here's an example of that. And Tim, maybe you can talk about, we have a lot of reports. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the variety that we offer.
Sure. So with the system out of the box, there's the 270 some odd reports. We break them into 3 separate categories in general. There's work in process, productivity, and SLA reporting for the base productivity tracking system, APT. On the North Star side, with order tracker and some of the other modules, there's additional reporting that kind of falls in line with the pre-press tracking things that we can do there. So from a reporting standpoint, we have tons of information that we're gathering based on the normal integrity processes that we're looking at, all of the camera or sensor information we're taking in. That just generates a lot of data. We take that and we try to present as many different ways for the customer to utilize that as we possibly can, and make sure that they understand what they have at their fingertips, that they can go in at any time for the reporting. It's available in real time, and they can have that also delivered, for example, in emails, so they could get like a daily report update for jobs that are open, for example, or jobs that are late. Hopefully that report's blank, but if not, at least they can get that visibility at any point.
Yeah, it turned out to be quite a big system, it can be almost a little overwhelming. So what we tried to do initially for sure is to, again, ask the sales rep with Tim to review that with the customer ahead of time so that we can get them up and running quickly. All the reports are included, so it's not unusual to add some new other reports during the installation, or even 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 months later, the customer will come back and say, I thought I heard something about this view. Can you show me how to use that? And that's typical in the way that we interact with customers and support them. Probably the dashboards that we provide they're probably more heavily used in the reports. Oh, I only say that, and correct me if I'm mistaken here, Tim. It's just that the dashboards themselves are highly visible, so it's easy for an operator or a supervisor to take kind of like a glance at the dashboards to see what's going on, and then from the dashboards, they can drill down to the reports anyhow. And speak to that for a minute if you would, Tim.
Sure. So, like you were saying, the dashboarding is the gateway and window to everything that's going on. So whether it's the pre-press tracking and pull process and itemization and stuff that we have there through order tracker, the full-on production integrity tracking and APT on the back end of the system. We have dashboarding that gives that visibility to what's going on at any given time in the system. And that's all happening and reconciling to our central server from each workstation. So unlike a purely file-based system that may take minutes or hours to update that data back to a central location, that's all getting updated as the work is ongoing. And on top of that, that lets us take, not only just a dashboard that gives you a snapshot, but things that we have a tool called Job Explorer, for example, that gives you visibility to do ad hoc reporting against all of this data. So you can have your CSRs, your account management team look at all this information in real time, work with scheduling departments, figure out exactly where jobs are at. If you need to do pull operations, whatever you need to do, and manage the shop instead of just wonder what's going on. So that information is certainly available and used heavily.
Great, thanks, Tim. Yeah, this obviously is a workflow diagram that Tim puts together. Sales side doesn't want to pretend that we do this. The technical guys do. And obviously it's a snapshot that everything that we're planning to do does get done. It shows how it all hooks together. It's fairly obvious, but Tim, you feel free to make some comments on this.
Sure. So for the installation where some installations are different than others, right? We have some that are very simple. It's just a few devices, and then we have other ones like this where it's a couple systems talking together, passing back some of the integrity information on the back end. We have, in this case, like a insight system doing some of the tracking that we're going to be taking information indirectly instead of like through a normal direct camera connection. Excuse me, we have other connections to camera systems in this workflow here. So this is trying to give the customer a picture of overall what all of those connections are going to look like, how our system along with the other systems will kind of all fit together, and that in the end we can centralize all of the connection points that they're looking for so that they wind up with one system that can communicate to all of their devices, in this case on the floor, consolidate all of that information, and then give their operational staff the one point of visibility and data reference that they were looking for.
Yep. And it does look complicated to a non-technical guy like me. And if you notice, the APT, which is the Ironside stuff, is smack in the middle of all this. That's not an accident. That's by design, because we're kind of the glue that can help hold all this together. And obviously, whether it's remote or on-site install, having a map that shows you all the pieces and where they are and how they need to go back and forth and move data is a great tool to have. And it's been extremely helpful, particularly in our remote installations that we've been doing the past year heavily and that we've been doing throughout our history. Here is part of an installation plan. It's built on the plan of approach or the statement of work. I think what we wanted to point out here, and Tim can speak to it in a second, is, it's not just we're going to show up for a week and we start at A and we wind up at Z. It actually gives a pretty thorough breakdown of what we expect to do every day. We're not going to get into that, but this is just by example of how detailed the planning actually does get done ahead of time, so that when we're working with the clients, we're not wasting their time. And, particularly remote, we want to make sure we're efficient, and this supports all that. So again, Tim, maybe just make a comment or two on this.
Sure. So much like the plan at the beginning, we try to be structured with our approach to the installation for a customer. So we understand that their time is valuable, our time is valuable. We need to make sure that when we arrive at a location, or if we're doing a remote installation, it's very clear what the expectation is, both from Ironsides and for the customer. So they're not wondering, do I need to provide material? Do I need to provide an operator? Do we need this remote connection? We try to clearly spell out what those things are, how that's going to work, and make sure that there's no misunderstanding about what needs to happen in order for this to happen successfully in a timely manner. And at the same time, we have these plans. We understand the customer has production needs, so we design them to be flexible. So we have all of these points lined out over days, but we can flow them differently depending on production needs. So we're not inflexible as far as what the customer has going on. We will migrate the different points and things that we have going on based on those production operations as well.
Great, thank you. And this is pretty much a spec for the technical prerequisites on the customer side. Obviously, when you're working with software, the software needs a host. So this document is pretty standard, outlines some pretty standard technical requirements relative to servers and PCs and what have you. What would you say about this, Tim?
Right. So like I was saying just a moment ago, the whole point of this documentation and the process overall is to make sure that everybody understands clearly what's needed to make this efficient and successful. We don't want to show up and there be some surprise. Well, you guys never said we needed to have connections at the machine ready, or if we're excuse me, if we're doing remote software install and we're getting log data, you never told us we needed to have vendor representation. Well, if we have that all kind of spelled out in the documentation, there's no surprises. Everyone can plan appropriately and everything goes nice and smooth.
Great. I want to talk a little bit about training and ongoing support. I mean, there's not a lot of slides to show about this, so I don't want to shortchange it. But Tim, if you would give an overview of what the training situation is like at the plant. I know we do classroom and operator training, and then there's a lot of hand holding, probably for a week or two after the initial install is done. Maybe speak to that if you would, please, and then we can wrap it up.
Sure. Right. So from completion of the installation standpoint, while the installation is ongoing, if it involves on-site components, while we're doing the installation, the physical on machine, for example, portion of the installation, the technician will work with whatever operator is assigned to kind of get them loosely familiar and exposed to the Ironsides product. And then we'll have a more formal group training session while we're there to make sure the operators, management, supervisor, staff are all very familiar and comfortable with whatever process is being put in place. From a more management training perspective, those we typically would do remotely, regardless of whether we're doing an on-site portion or not, because these days you can pretty much handle that anywhere. It's a classroom setting where we would remote into the customer's system, walk them through what their plant looks like at the kind of the end of the installation week, how the work is actually running on their machines at the time of the training at that moment, get them up to speed in their own system, get them comfortable in their own system. So we do that initial training, and then from the installation point, we don't just sit back and walk away from the customer. We make sure over the next month, at least every week, we check in with the customer. We have weekly meetings. If they have additional training needs, questions, or issues, we address those and set up any sessions that they need. And then from there, we kind of space out additional check-ins with them so that they're very comfortable with the installation, what's going on, and their staff from management down to operators is able to utilize the system to the fullest.
I'll probably get chastised for saying this, but at the end of the day, we end up having a true partnership with our clients, such that, you know, when they need support, or even if they have basic questions, or even if they want to talk to the guys about, you know, other reports they could be using, it's a pretty direct connection from the client to Tim and the staff. We don't go through a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, contact this number, contact that number. We of course have a 24-hour call-in number, but the fact of the matter is that when our clients call, one of our people are there to respond, and they get help right away. So I'd just like to say, on behalf of Tim and myself and Ironsides, thanks very much for joining us on this overview. I think you might enjoy TJ's presentation. He always seems to make it interesting. And with that, Tim, thanks very much for your time. You did a great job. Hope
Thanks, Bill.
everybody appreciates it. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.